I'm here today with Marissa Eigenbrood, who is president and partner of Smith Publicity, working with established publishers, innovative hybrid presses, independently published debut authors, and influential keynote speakers and industry luminaries. With a commitment to lasting impact, she develops captivating book launches, but strategically also guiding authors towards a robust and enduring presence in their field. Marissa began her career at Smith as a publicist, leading the strategic direction and execution of campaigns across business, finance, and other related genres. And that love of matchmaking the right expert with the right media opportunity and nurturing that relationship for long-term impact is at the foundation of all she does today. So first of all, welcome, Marissa. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Allison. I'm just really excited to be a part of this conversation today.
It's very cool. Now, Marissa and I met in person for the first time at the Frankfurt Book Fair back in October. And I've been on the Smith Publicity podcast, so I feel like we're just kind of keeping this, basically just creating opportunities to talk to each other, which is terrific. I'm totally here for that.
I mean, I love it. So keep scheduling on each other's calendar ahead, right?
That's right. Just find some pretext to have another conversation. But one of the things that I really wanted to talk about, because there'll be a lot of people listening are going, oh, publicity, is that marketing? Do I need that? So yeah, just sort of tell us what is it all about and why does it matter and why is it a good idea for authors to think about publicity?
Well, yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about this, Allison. And I think that it's, it applies to anyone and any genre, but especially for those who are in the business space, which I know is so much of the practical inspiration audience here. And so I'd love to start off and just kind of share a little bit of the key differences between, I would say, publicity and marketing and kind of how we like to think about that. And then why each is so important and how they kind of work together really closely as well. So I like to say the basic key difference is that with marketing, you're direct to consumer. Think about marketing as your social media channels, your website, your speaking engagements, your coursework that you have. There's all these opportunities to connect directly to your audience where you fully control the message that's shared from what you have in your content over to the individual on the other side. And you can really target that to certain people. On the publicity side of things, we have a middleman, a middle person between us, and that's the media. So there's a little less control over kind of what that message looks like. But what we do is we get the boost of credibility from these media outlets that are amplifying your voice, your expertise, your book, your offerings in this way. They're getting behind you in this way. And so it creates this elevated level of credential and I think elevated level of trust that comes from being featured in media as well. But what's really interesting, I've been here at Smith for 15 years and publicity is, so different today than what it was even then. And again, in years past, in that we do lean into such a diverse pool of different types of media. So there's kind of our traditional world of publicity that's getting a TV interview, being on a radio show, potentially, having some kind of feature in a newspaper, or even kind of moving into a little bit more of our newer media, online type coverage and such. But now today we also have our podcasts, our Substacks, all of these other amazing opportunities, our influencers to tap into. So there really is such this beautiful, robust space to be able to share your message, with these outlets and these, influential places, and then to have them, translate it and support you and lift you up as they present it to their audiences on the other side. So again, there's a little bit of the differences, but it's also gives a little glimpse into why it's so important too, because you do get that again that control on the marketing side. But then there's a bias certainly that comes with what you share through your marketing efforts. And with the publicity side, we get more of that kind of unbiased support from media.
And I think that's such a great point you make about the marketing that you do yourself, which is terrific. You've got full control over it. And this is it's not an either or situation, is it? You still need to be doing the marketing at your end as well. But you haven't got all the eyeballs. And so it makes so much sense to sort of align yourself and to position yourself for distribution by the big platforms that have got all the eyeballs that are aligned with your message. That's where the people are, people.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one thing to have your network that you're tapping into, that you're telling about your new book coming out, or you're, kind of using as a resource to even share ideas with your, related to your content that you're going to include in the book, or include in a new keynote you're going to give, or include in a new service offering that you have, for your clients. But yeah, there's something that again, this extra level of support and excitement that kind of comes from not only just being featured, in like an HBR or such, to be able to say, oh my gosh, I have this wonderful, well respected entity that's supporting me, but also to really dive into where your audience lives, where these niche pockets
Yeah.
are, and be able to connect directly with others who are then going to come into your world and want to stay there a bit longer as you continue to share content. So you've got your existing world, and then media is one way that helps to bring in those new eyes and ears to your space.
And one thing that always used to be true in the past, and I'm really interested to see if it's changing now, is
Mm,
that it was always quite a regional thing. So you work with a publicist in the UK and they're like, we don't really reach the US market. And
sure.
I don't know, do you think that's changing, or do you think actually even if you want US coverage, you need to go to a US publicist?
I do think there's a lot of benefit. It really depends upon your specific goals as an author. And I also think it's really dependent upon, especially again for business authors, where your clients or potential clients really exist too. So we work with authors based all over the world, and the majority of our work is focused on U.S. and Canadian media, but we also, are regularly securing coverage with BBC and The Guardian and Financial Times and others that have more of this international reach, I would say.
Yeah.
But I think that again, if you're a UK author who, you really don't necessarily have goals to expand your client reach and such into other markets like the US, then I think that working with a UK publicist is best. But if you see the opportunity for expansion, you really want to grow more of a global presence for yourself. And there are wonderful UK teams and publicity teams who will, do a little bit of that outreach across the kind of similarly to how we do to more of the top tier. They'll do a little bit of that across, to the US market as well. But if you really want to think about a robust,
Yeah.
platform building presence and more of a global presence for yourself, your work, then I do think it's very much worthwhile to also look to bring in a US team. So it's very dependent upon each person. And that's a big part of how we work too, is always really talking to someone, understanding, what their
Yeah.
goals
What are
are.
you trying to
I had
achieve?
I had a conversation with an Australian author recently who really wasn't completely sure if he wanted to, travel to the US very often. I mean, that's not a short flight. So
No.
very mindful of it. And but if he really he liked the idea of maybe being in US media, but we talked about what the value and benefits of it would be. And and we walked away from the call with him doing some reflection from that. It wasn't necessarily a yes, absolutely. He's had great coverage in Australia for his book. We're talking post publication, but it was a great point to just take a step back on and say, listen, if we do this together, the ROI of this activity will likely be working toward getting new clients, speaking whatever in the US. And so is that what you want? And again, there's certainly Zoom and other things to do things virtually, but there's a likelihood of that in-person requests
And
and
it's
stuff
just
too.
such a good point, is it? Because the ROI, if you're looking at selling more books to cover the costs of working with a publicist,
Hmm.
it's pretty tricky. They're very low priced things, people. So
They
yeah, you really
are,
got to be
yes.
thinking about the bigger picture. It's interesting that you said that
Absolutely.
you were talking post publication with that guy,
Hmm.
because I'm guessing that's not ideal for you, is it? When do you prefer to work with people?
It can be ideal, again, based on
Okay.
goals. It's
Yeah.
okay. But if someone comes to me and says, yeah, I'm 2 weeks out from publication date, or I'm a month post publication, and my only goals are book sales at this time. My only goals are for the book to get coverage at this time. Then I have to say, hold on one second, this might not be the right fit, because it's gonna be much harder to get that book centric coverage that we talk about. That's reviews of the book, excerpt placements, being on certain recommended lists, the 5 books you should read, in the Financial Times that we see every month. Those things are all coordinated pre-publication. We're
Yeah.
starting 3, 4, 5 months before pub date when we're working to work toward those particular book-centric goals. A few things happen maybe a little bit closer too, but for the most part, we need to have that time if those are some of the things that we want to try to achieve together. But if majority of the goals are focused on thought leadership elevation, on expert, branding, on really bringing attention to that overall brand ecosystem and using the book as that supporting, thing, that resource, that great, kind of tangible product that supports the overall John Smith brand, if you will, then yeah, there's things we can do, because we can lean into byline articles, we can lean into podcast interviews, we can, position for expert commentary. We can really look at how we're positioning the expert voice at any time. It's actually, we do that sometimes well in advance of even when someone is maybe shopping their book to publishers and they need to get some fresh media. We've done some kind of little spurts of work at those stages too. So there's an evergreen nature. Yeah,
that's actually more about establishing yourself to get the publishing deal in the first place. Yeah,
completely. We've stepped in quite a bit on projects where they've worked with like the in-house team, whether that be with a hybrid publisher, traditional, someone else they've had involved, and then they say, "Hey, I want to keep this going for more of a longer term kind of momentum, and what does that look like?" And with the goals again and the mindset of it all shifting more toward that expert voice elevation versus book, all book all the time. So, but the book always comes along for the ride, and that truly, no matter what stage we're at in the process, that expertise elevation is actually the most important thing, because people want connection with people. And so long gone are those days where you got to go on TV, just talk to a media contact and say, "I wrote a book, let's talk about it." And just hold it up, like Vanna White on Wheel of Fortune. We don't get to just celebrate a book, unfortunately, anymore, because there's so many that are published, but people want connection. And so it really is, the more we can create that trust and that need for your expertise and your voice, then that creates more of that likelihood of someone saying, "Oh, I saw this, this interview here. I listened to this podcast here. I read this article. I decided to follow along on LinkedIn for a period of time. I see that there's, a lot of value in this person. Now I want to quote unquote invest in them." And that's where you're more likely to see the book purchased from more of that individual person who's not, it's kind of coming in as a cold lead to your world. So, and no matter what point we're at, we're always really emphasizing the importance of that expert voice in the mix of what we're doing.
Yeah. That's so interesting. And it's really interesting to think of the book as being a sort of almost like a necessary but not sufficient condition to generate interest as well, that you've got to be thinking about more broadly. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess from an author's perspective, well, let's say from your perspective, what kind of authors do you most like to work with? Like when you thinking about your ideal author to work with, what are they like? What are they doing?
Oh my goodness. Yes. What are they doing? They are partners to us. I think that's the most beautiful way to describe it. This isn't, the person who's not a great fit for us, or someone who says, "Here's my book, go do something with it. I'm going to wait.
My book. Here's some money. Away you go."
Yes. Even if you have $1 million, I don't know, maybe no, but no, but it really is, because it is a puzzle that we're putting together here around a launch and around a brand, and you have to fill in so many of these different pieces to the puzzle. And so publicity and building media attention is one piece of that puzzle. But I always like to say, if you are on a fantastic, podcast, if you get to, to talk with my God, Jay Sheedy, who's just, a huge name in the kind of personal and professional development space. If you're on that show, that's amazing exposure, and you have it in that moment. It's a little bit of the 15 minutes of fame kind of thing. What do you do with it after that? Yeah. Are you ready to amplify it? And so the best partner to us is someone who understands that what we do is just one piece of that puzzle. There's a lot of other different things that they need to be doing too. And it's okay if they're not fully clear on what that is right away. We do a lot of early consulting work on brand development and kind of what you should be thinking about around LinkedIn presence or on your website or things like that too, if that's needed. And so you don't have to have everything just in a perfect place when the time comes for us to work together. But the understanding needs to be there that hey, if we get you that really great podcast interview, or you are, in the Financial Times recommended reads, list for the month, that you are ready to share that through and amplify that through LinkedIn, to go to a newsletter that you have, to, when you're pitching yourself for speaking, and say is recently featured in the Financial Times and such. So understanding that this is all kind of a web that's woven together, and how it all works is really important. You can't just do one piece of it. And also a great partner is someone who is understanding that this is a marathon, not a sprint. This is a long game process, and there's there's a lot of pressure that's been put on the build up to publication date for so many years in traditional publishing in particular, and that's great. It's important, but I like to look at a publication date as the book's birthday. And if you have a baby and you think about the birthday, after that, now it's out in the world. Now it has the opportunity to actually have influence and, to build connection. We're just talking about how great it's going to be before that, but now it gets to be great. And if you nurture it and you support it and you keep lifting it up, it can be bigger and greater and such along the way for well after publication date too. So that mindset around your role in this process, and being ready to commit that time and that energy, and sometimes that investment in other teams and such too. And then also just understanding that this will be a process, through that. Those are some of the individuals we really love to work with. Sometimes a lot of that responsibility sits with just the individual. We know it's a lot. Other times they've got great teams supporting them. And we love when there's a great virtual assistant or a great marketing manager from an organization or something that is there to support as well.
And sometimes that's really helpful psychologically, I think, for authors as well, because there is a huge emotional load in continually hustling, continually sort of putting yourself forward. I think that's for lots of authors, that's really hard to do. And it's a funny old mix, isn't it, writing a book? Because you're putting yourself saying, I have the authority to put this forward, but you've also got to be incredibly humble about that. I know you haven't got the last word. And also you've put in the hustle and the graft.
Yeah, it really, I don't take it lightly, the work that we get to do here at Smith, and just the time and the vulnerability, and the energy and the sacrifices that come with being an author. I don't take that lightly at all. And I mean, you yourself are an author, and I bow down to anyone who has the guts to,
well, that's nice.
do
Thank
it.
You.
Because I truly, I don't know if I have it in me personally to ever write a book. I don't know if I have the
we'll
guts
talk later,
to
Marissa.
go there. But it doesn't matter what you're writing about. It doesn't matter what there is such a vulnerability to it. As you said, like you're putting yourself on the page. You're creating this like tangible thing that you can't take away at that point. Like it's out there. And you're also, there is such a process that you and I have talked so much about writing and content and all of that, and how important it is to the development of the book, but also you will be writing forever. You will never stop writing. And so you need therapy before you start going into the book process, because you've got to get ready for it. You need like a performance coach or something to truly get you ready. But all jokes aside, it's a daunting process. And the time that you're in a publicity campaign, again, in that partnership, we are going after all these, I like to say, we're opening these doors and you have to walk through them. So you still have to be available to do a podcast interview. If, HBR wants a 1,000-word article, we're going to coach you through that stuff, but you still are writing this piece. And so there's a lot less sleep and maybe a little less family time sometimes that comes with being in the thick of a publicity campaign as well.
That's such a great image, isn't it? You open the doors, but the author is the one that's got to walk through. And that's a great image. So you mentioned before about some of the changes you've seen in, traditional media is still there and it's still really important, but it's also being supplemented. There's an additional, even the traditional media outlets have more opportunities in a sense, don't they, in the online space as well? So just talk us through a few of the changes that you've seen in your time at Smith. And I'd also like to talk about what you see coming down the line as well.
Yeah. Oh, certainly. I think that one common thread that runs through what I've seen, and I think what is to continue coming, is just all wrapped up in the word like niching. Things are going to continue niching further and further and further, where, again, 15 years ago, being on the Today Show, being on, NPR's Morning Edition, there was this core group of media in the US that if you got here, you were going to sell a lot of books. Oprah, be on Oprah. That was it. There was just this guarantee of you will sell books. If you're here, you will get a certain level of attention. And because back then we didn't have blogs, we didn't have podcasts, there was a more limited pool that we were kind of focusing on. Still a lot, but much more limited. And today, those things are still important from a brand elevation standpoint, making sure everybody's clear on the fact that Oprah no longer has a show, because sometimes we still get asked if someone can be on Oprah.
Good to know.
Especially business authors, we're not getting on Oprah. But there is, NPR still exists, and so there is still benefit to, again, those incredible platform elevation type of media opportunities. Fortune, HBR, Business Insider, Entrepreneur, Fast Company, so on and so forth, the New York Times and such, that are going to be great logos to feature, on your platform, on your social media, pages and such. But that's not often where your target audience is really condensed and living. And so what is the beautiful thing about all of this newer media, this more non-traditional media that's emerged over recent years? Again, our podcasts, our blogs, there's so many fantastic, not necessarily a newer media thing, but so many of these like trade publications and things like that when you really get to focus on them, there might not be household names, but you're reaching a condensed, pool of your audience. And so I think that as more new media continues to emerge in different ways, then we're also going to see the importance of getting more and more of that type of attention. And that's something that we've always kind of put equal stock in here at Smith is, yes, we want the brand building, household name media opportunities, but we equally as important, sometimes a little more important. We see more requests for consulting or speaking from someone who read an article or such coming from the niche world, typically. So yeah,
such a great point, isn't it? Because
right, yeah,
the sort of the big direct consumer, almost the big sort of mass media outlets, they feel terrific, but actually they can have almost zero impact on sales because these are not your target people. So it's a nice vanity metric. But
yeah, if you have a book about company culture that really is speaking to HR leaders, let's say, then yes, is it great to talk about that for Fast Company and to have that article placement? Absolutely. But we also want to make sure we're targeting HR executive, HR.com, the Society of Human Resource Management, their blog, certain podcasts that speak to them, because as a decision maker in that space, you're probably getting those newsletters in your inbox on a regular basis. Do I get certain business ones in my inbox every day? Yes, but what do I read? Shelf Awareness and Publishers Weekly and Allison's amazing newsletter and all of these great. But that's what with it from a professional standpoint. I'm curious about this management article from just developing myself as a manager, and so I'm curious about that, and maybe get some inspiration for some clients we have. But what I'm learning about my industry, I'm going to more of these trade publications and such. And so I think that again, there's kind of this dual connection here of the change has been more of this new media. And then from that has come this opportunity to really niche down further and further and further. It's really interesting post US presidential election. There's been so much conversation around, well, where did the candidates connect with their audiences? And we saw so much more. I mean, the Trump campaign was on Joe Rogan's podcast, was on Theo Vaughn's podcast, which a lot of people don't know, but he's an incredibly huge following. They connected with these really influential people. Even we saw, Kamala Harris on the Call Her Daddy podcast. Like, there are these pop culture, kind of entities that's where they got in front of the most people. If you actually look at the number of people that those podcasts reached versus anything on CNN, it was tenfold of the number of people that were listening in and tuning into that. And so it's just really understanding that there is so much value in some of that non-traditional stuff that I think a lot of people still kind of sit with and ideally want to see. But yeah, the New York
Yeah.
Times, not many people have that coming to their home anymore,
No,
on a
it's, yeah,
regular
so
basis.
interesting. Yeah, so it's, and that's more and more about relationship, isn't it? And developing,
Oh, so much.
finding out not just broadcasting, but listening and being aware and understanding
Hmm.
what people want from the outlet that you might be having a podcast conversation on, listening to some previous
Hmm.
podcasts, all that kind of
Oh,
stuff.
absolutely.
Yeah, brilliant. I
Yeah.
always ask my guests, Marissa, for their best tip for a first-time business book author. I mean, we've done nothing else but give them tips the whole time, this whole conversation. But if I said to you, what's like the one thing, if you take nothing else away from this conversation, what should you keep in
Oh,
mind?
I'm not going to talk about publicity at all in this. I'm just going to say be active on LinkedIn. That's what I'm going to say. Be
Wow.
active on
Okay.
LinkedIn, please, because that is just this beautiful. It's a wonderful community. It's the only social media platform that feels like this positive place of support and uplifting of each other. But there's such an amazing opportunity there to build connection, to be authentic, to share a little bit about yourself, to test ideas out with people who are in your space, and by being active, post a couple times a week, 2 to 3 times, is great. Just build that momentum if you're not already doing it, or just get back into it again if you haven't. And when you're on there, I always say, don't be afraid to just connect with people. You don't have to have this long history of a relationship with them. If there's someone who you think might benefit from hearing about your book in the future, just reach out to connect. You don't have to send a message every time. It doesn't have to be perfect. That will help grow that momentum. But it's so valuable to have that for publicity, for your book launch. Down the road, that's the first group, outside of maybe your friends and family, that you're going to go to and say, hey, I have a book coming out. Would you consider pre-ordering it or supporting it in some kind of way? And then they're the warmer leads that you're going to kind of get established first. And then we're going to bring the cold leads in from the media side of things. So there's got to be warm leads a little bit there, to
Yeah,
start. So that's why
that's
I
such a great
share
tip.
that.
Yeah. And also, of course, the people that you're connected to on LinkedIn, they're connected to people too. So if you're reaching out for
Yes.
endorsers, for example, always worth going to
Mhm.
LinkedIn and see if you're a second or third connection and trying to sort of get in that way. Yeah,
Absolutely.
brilliant. And
Absolutely.
you're speaking to me because I'm just so busy. I'm not doing anything on LinkedIn at all. What we do occasionally in the Practical Inspiration Author Group is we have LinkedIn challenges, and we do this thing,
Mm.
for a month, everybody's going to post every day on LinkedIn, and we're going to support each other. And we just see the engagement and the opportunities soar. It is, when you do it is phenomenal in terms of what it gives back. So
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
Timely reminder for me.
And I love hearing that you do that with your authors too. It's
Yeah.
it's it's so fantastic to have these like subgroups of connections. And again, go back many years, your pre-orders came from like certain media coverage in the past. That's not as much anymore today. Most of that's going to come from your networks that you have. And so kind of having these different pockets of people who are ready to support and kind of be part of your street team is really powerful. So I love that you're creating, one
Oh,
for
it's
your
the
authors already.
best. Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
we've also got in our Slack channel, we've got, promo as one of the channels, and authors
Yeah.
are in there all the time, and they're sort of saying, it's my 99p deal. Let's all get behind it, or I've
Mhm.
got this opportunity, or whatever. I love seeing
It's
it happen. It's brilliant.
wonderful.
Yeah,
It's so
really, really
great.
good. And I guess the other question that I always ask people is to recommend as a book, and I can't wait to see what you're going to recommend, because you must have
Oh
so many
my
books
gosh.
just out of sight here that you could reach and pull. What should we be reading?
Oh my gosh. One happens to be right here that I thought about. And I was like, it happens to be my pile over here that I can read into quickly. But just because he's number one, I'm going to say he is the author himself. His name is Joe Mull. He is a hybrid published author with Page Two. His book is called Employalty. And this is just one of the most fantastic. It's called How to Ignite Commitment and Keep Top Talent in the New Age of Work. And Joe is just one of the best humans, truly, that I've gotten to know in a long time. He was one of the most beautiful partners in our publicity campaign that we did together. And again, you'd think that I might pull out like a random book about publicity or writing or something like that, but just it's a really good book. I actually just got shortlisted for Summary.com's one of the book of the year, up against like Amy Edmondson and stuff, which is just incredible for Joe. And so it's a really great book. If you're a leader in any sized organization, a manager, whatever it is, there's amazing, really human centric kind of content in here that I can't celebrate Joe enough. So.
Brilliant. I love that. Thank you. And it's always great to, even if it's not your area, I think if you're reading books that have been really well written and you're looking at authors who are doing book marketing, self-promotion and so on well, and working well with publicity people, it's always really good to just peek under the hood and just see, well, what
Oh
is he
yeah.
doing? Where's he? Yeah. So you can almost reverse
Yeah,
engineer some stuff.
he is.
Love that.
He's broken the mold. He's there's not much that he could have done better, I have to say, in working with us and continued
Excellent.
to since his book came out a little while ago. So it's not it's not brand new this year or anything. So it just
He's
continues
in
to
it for
get
the
that
long haul.
wonderful energy. Oh yeah, for sure.
Excellent. Thank you. And Marissa, if people want to find out more about you, more about Smith Publicity, where should they go?
Yeah, so I am pretty active on LinkedIn. So
Good.
please feel free to come on over, follow me, connect with me. I love those direct connections and having those direct messages, conversations, and everything. An email directly to me is great too. The Smith Publicity website has a lot of content, but we also have our podcast, our newsletter. We love to share educational information as much as we can. We do regular webinars and such too. But for that kind of regular consistency of sharing stuff, LinkedIn and my profile in particular is definitely best.
I love that you're walking the talk. Excellent.
Trying.
Fantastic. So much fun and so much value in what you've shared today, Marissa. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Allison, for having me. This is such a wonderful conversation.